second.
Yep, we're live. Go on.
Are we live on YouTube? Should I go ahead?
Yeah, we are live on YouTube now. You can carry on.
Oh, hey guys, welcome to this 2CC session here at Google Developer Students Club. My name is Rehan and I'll be your host for today. We're going to be doing Experience XR with Unity and Mrtk, and it's going to be pretty cool today. Before that, the most important thing is there are certain prerequisites that I hope that you have downloaded. It's Unity version 2020.3.9 and Android build support. If you have not done it, I'll show you today again how to do it, and you can do it along with me. In addition to that, I'll be posting a link on the chat for the mixed reality toolkit that needs to be downloaded, the feature tool, and the link will be shared both in YouTube and Teams, and I hope that you go ahead and download that. If you're having queries regarding how to download it, again, not a thing to worry about. We're going to go ahead and do that too. So let's begin with Unity. So what is Unity? Well, it's a game engine. Well, starting from the fact that the way they call themselves is a platform for creating interactive, real-time content from 2D, 3D games to XR applications. The best thing about Unity is its abstraction that it provides. There is so much things out there in Unity, yet it's so simple to use that it's going to help you make applications smoothly. One of the finer things about Unity is its various build supports. It supports building for Android, for iOS, for smart TVs and HoloLenses, which is an XR device, to Oculus Quests, and much more. All of these can be done in the platform using C# itself, but just choosing the different platform. So let's go ahead and check out. The first thing is how to download Unity. So to download Unity, of course, you can always go to Unity download and ask your friend Google out there and choose the first link that pops up. Once you do that, go ahead and download the Unity Hub. Since I've already downloaded the Unity Hub, I will not be doing it again, but I would prefer you to do it. And please do not use the beta because there are always issues with beta versions. After you have downloaded Unity Hub and you launch it, you will be greeted by the simplistic screen of Unity Hub. And you have to go ahead and install your Unity version. To do that, go to the installs on the left side, click on it, and then just click on add. So you can see that I have already pre-installed some Unity versions already. For you, these will not be there. To add them, just go ahead and click on add. And the version that we will be using today is 2020.3.9 LTS version. LTS stands for long-term support, and it's always preferable to use an LTS version because they are more stable. Since we are using 2020.3.9, it will not be available out here directly. For that, you will need to go to the download archive. Wait for it to load. Choose Unity 2020.x. And once you see all the options, download this 2020.3.9. The reason I'm asking you to download this specific version is because this works perfectly with Mrtk that we're going to be learning later on in today's session. And secondly, it's a good idea to stay on the same platform to help solve queries and doubts. So that is how you install Unity. To go ahead and install the mixed reality feature tool that I just provided with the link with, just press the link and put it up on Google. Once this opens, just go down and you will see the download option right out here. Just go ahead and select the environment setup option and you can download the latest version of the mixed reality feature tool. So that is the basic setup of what we are expecting to have today before we proceed forward. So coming back to the boring old slides. So like I said, Unity is a game engine, and the best thing about Unity is the fact that it lets you develop XR applications too. You have support for AR, VR, and MR applications. And perhaps in a most relatable way on what is Unity is where you finally meet that good old vectors for the first time. So this time, it's the same good old vectors you met in high school and the first semester of college, but you are going to use them actually for some pretty cool stuff this time. So that's pretty much it. Let's go and begin with using Unity. So the first thing you need to do is open Unity Hub, and you will be greeted by this projects section. You will not have multiple projects as I have right now. It probably is going to be empty. You need to go ahead and create a new project. To do that, it's pretty simple. Just go ahead and select new, or if you have multiple Unity versions, just select the drop-down option and select the Unity version that you want to open a project in. We're going to open with 2020.3.9. Now you'll see that there are a couple of templates or pipelines that are available out here. You have the universal render pipeline, high definition render pipeline, and a bunch of more which is going to get loaded soon. These are just the way that the graphics card is optimized. The high universal render pipeline is much more optimized for mobile devices, and with good graphics, high definition render pipeline is similarly for high-end devices. Today we are going to be using just the standard pipeline with the 3D, because we're going to be creating a 3D application. So choose the 3D template on the Unity Hub and then give it a project name. Let's call this my first XR application, because that's pretty cool, right? After we have done that, choose the location that you want to save it in. It's a good idea to remember the location because you're going to be using it later on in this course. Finally, just click create, and then you wait for Unity to do its magic. By the time it loads, if you have any queries regarding Unity, downloading Mrtk, any questions regarding Rehan, what is Unity, you can just drop it in the chats and I'll be there right there to answer all of your questions. Pretty cool. We have no questions so far, so I think we can begin with Unity. So the first screen that you're going to be greeted by in Unity is this wonderful dark theme skin of Unity. This is where you're going to be spending most of your time in developing applications, working on codes, breaking your head, and drinking coffee. So there's a bunch of stuff that's out here in this screen right now, and we're going to understand the user interface first. Yep, it's going to take a little bit while and might get a little bit boring because there's so much stuff, but I promise you we're going to be coming back to the sweet stuff soon and quick. So let's start with the first window known as the scene window. This is the exact window that you see in front of you right now. Well, what is the scene window? So just imagine yourself as the director of a movie, and the set of the movie set is the scene in front of you. So it is here where you're going to arrange your movie props, you're going to arrange your scripts for the actors to follow, and you're going to do all of these things in the scene out here. And it is exactly here that you're going to be programming, you're going to be arranging your applications, and you're going to make out the entire timeline of your movie, or in our perspective, it's an XR application. So that is a simplistic definition of the scene window. Then the next window on the right side of the scene window is the game window. Well, what is the game window? To get to the game window, you can go ahead and just click on it and it's going to open the new window. And the question comes to, what exactly is the game window? Well, it is exactly what the camera sees. So in your movie, while you're directing a movie, you'll have multiple cameras, and whatever your primary camera is going to see, the camera that's currently active, is going to be shown in the game window. So you can see that we can see a camera prefab right out there, and we are seeing exactly what the camera is seeing. So that is in the most basic definition of the game window. Next up is the asset store window, and this is a beautiful place. To get up here, the first thing you need to do is click on search online, because they have moved the asset store online for better experience. And you're gonna, yep, and we have the asset store up, and for some reason it is not working. Pretty interesting. I've never found this before, so maybe we can just go ahead and search for the Unity asset store on Google itself. And this is the asset store, and this is the place where you can download your 3D models, your particle effects, your scripts and whatnot. Instead of creating it from scratch, especially if you're an indie developer, then the asset store is the place to be, because you will get most of your things out here. Some are for free, some are for a cost, a certain amount. You have free licenses and commercial licenses and much more. It all depends on the way you want to take it. So moving ahead to the scene window, there is something that you will see on the top right as something known as gizmos. Well, what are gizmos on the scene? Well, gizmos are nothing but 2D sprites that represent each game object on the scene. So you see that there is a light, that's something that looks like a sun out here, and there is something that looks like the camera out here. So all of these are different game objects in the scene, and the way you can visualize them as of now is by using these gizmos, or the 2D sprites that show where it is. There are going to be occasions when you would not like to see these gizmos because it gets really cluttered. So in that case, the easiest way to turn off gizmos is to just click on it and toggle it on. Again, I'm going to toggle it back on because for the right moment, I need the gizmos. You can also go ahead and click the drop down and increase and decrease the size of the gizmos. I would keep it somewhere in between, around this much. So that's the 3 primary windows that you will see on your scene when you first open Unity. So that's pretty much it. Congratulations, you know a third of Unity. So let's go ahead to the hierarchy today, right? So what is the hierarchy? And hierarchy is the window on your left side out here. The hierarchy is a list view of the collection of game objects in your scene. You can see that you have the main camera game object, you have the directional light game object, and many more game objects that you'll finally have on your scene. The easiest way to arrange these game objects is by dragging and dropping them. You can arrange them according to your need, and it's a good idea to always keep it in a certain hierarchy, as it is called out here, because you want things to look clean and you want things to look nice when you are doing it, because as your project grows, there's going to be a bunch of stuffs out there, and you don't want to be towards the end like, oh my god, what is this thing that I created 2 days ago? So it's always a good idea to keep your hierarchy clean and organized. So whenever you select a game object in the hierarchy, you will see them getting highlighted on the scene view. So right now, you can see that I selected on the main camera and it is getting highlighted in the scene view. If I go ahead and select on the directional light, you can see that it's highlighted on the scene view again, and that's pretty cool because now we know what we have selected. A very good idea is something that we'll learn about creating empty game objects, which is, as the name describes, it's empty. And inside of that, we can put things that we instantiate during runtime to keep things clean and nice. So that's mostly about the hierarchy. The next thing we're going to go and dive into is the project window, and it's the window right out here in the bottom of your screen. So this project window, so what is the project window? Well, let's go back to the director example. So you have your movie set out there where you can direct your entire game or your movie. You have your camera and your lights and everything is fine, but the action is missing. Well, how do you fix that? Well, you need props to make action right. You definitely can't just put the camera in an empty set and film it. That's going to be a very, very boring movie. So the way you're going to do that is by using assets, but you have a bunch of assets or props, and where you're going to store that? Of course, you need to store it in your warehouse, and the project window is exactly that. The project window has a folder known as assets, and inside of assets is your prop warehouse. So you can store your scenes, the different movie sets, you can store your 3D models, you can go ahead and store your director scripts or the playwrights, and you can also go ahead and store particle effects and animations and everything. Again, it's a very, very good idea always to divide your warehouse into sub-warehouses. So you can go ahead and create folders here, maybe call it scripts, to store all the scripts, and similarly right-click, create folder, and let's call it materials, and we're going to come back to that later on. So these are like sub warehouses because you want things to be organized so that you can find it easily in your warehouse or the assets folder in the project. Being on the right side of the project window is the console window, where you're going to get the good old debug logs and errors and warnings and some side of hope and sometimes of disparity. It is exactly here where you're going to get all the console logs if you are acquainted with backend programming, or any kind of debug logs will be shown right out. So that is the project and the console window. I know that's a lot of things to take in for a couple of minutes, but we're going to talk about one last window, the inspector window, and then we're going to be talking and taking in any doubts that you might have. So the inspector window seems really blank. It's empty. Oh, what's to talk about it? That's because we have not selected any game object to inspect. So go ahead to the hierarchy and select one of the game object. Let me go ahead and select the main camera, and boom, you have a plethora of things right out there in the inspector. You have transforms and cameras and audio listeners and whatnot. If I go ahead and select on the directional light in the hierarchy, I will see that the inspector again shows me the transform and light. Well, what is the inspector? Well, the inspector will show you the properties of the selected objects, the values that can be changed, the transform, which we'll get to soon enough, and all the various components of the game object. And you will notice that each of these game objects have different components. The main camera has a camera component because its functionality is to act as a camera. The directional light has a light component because its functionality is to act as a light. And the similar way, if we add new components out here, all of those are going to have their own functionalities. So that's the basic overview of the main priority windows that is concerning Unity. If you have any doubts regarding any of these, any questions, just pop it down in the chats, and we're going to give it 30 seconds or 1 minute. Now we're going to check all of the questions. And the people watching over at YouTube, you can also go ahead and drop down the chat. I am noticing all of those. All right, no doubt so far. So I think we can proceed. This is a cool batch of people. They know what they are doing. That's really cool. Well, I have talked multiple times about game objects. I told about game objects in the hierarchy. I told about game objects in the inspector. You might be like, oh my God, Rehan, what are game objects? Well, game object is anything that you see on the scene. It's as simple as that. Anything that you see on the hierarchy, anything that you see on your scene is a game object. In a more formal definition, a game object is a collection of components like light or camera or audio listeners, as you see out here, and the collection of components and the transform. The reason transform is specified so explicitly here is because it is the transform that is there in almost every game object. It is this transform that determines the position, the location, the rotation, and the scale of the game object in the Unity universe. Well, these game objects will also show up in your game view whenever you have a look at them. So let's go ahead and create a game object. The way to create a game object is pretty simple. Go to the hierarchy and we're going to be creating a cube game object. So right click on the hierarchy, then choose 3D object because we want to create a 3D cube. And then just choose the first option that pops up called cube. Once you do that, you will have a cube right on your scene and you can see it right in front of you. If I shift to the game view, I will still see the cube even in the game view because it's right in the direction or in the field of view of the camera. So now we have a cube, we have game objects, we know how Unity works and looks like, but I am unable to move around in this new naive environment. So how do I move around? Well, it's pretty simple. So the way to move around is click on your right mouse button and just move your camera and you can look in all directions. And congratulations, you have 3 degrees of freedom now. You can look left, right, up and down and pivot. But the fun part isn't always in a trade-off environment or 3 degrees of freedom. So the idea is to have 6 degrees of freedom. And the way to do that is to use your keyboard keys of W, A, S, and D. It's similar to playing any game. So if you want to move forward, press on W. If you want to move left, on A, right on D, and back on S. The way to move around is to right-click on the scene and hold the right-click button. And then just press any of the movement keys to move around. I'm only using W and S to move front and back, and D to move right and left. And that's pretty much it. If you want to turn around and move in any of the directions, just press W and look into the direction that you want to go, and you can just move and play around and perhaps enjoy a good time in the beginning. If you have used Blender before, then this would be real similar and really easy to understand. So let's go ahead and understand the Unity's coordinate system. You are in a 3D space right now. And it's very important to know the coordinate system because it is exactly what is going to tell you where you are, why you are, and how you can manipulate things. Well, it's similar to any 3D coordinate system. You have the X, Y, and the Z axis. And the way you can notice this is by looking at this gizmo on the top right corner. And this is going to show you which axis you are currently facing. So the X axis is in this direction, the Y is in the top, and the Z is on the right side. Now, if I see that the gizmo out here itself is moving around. And if I'm pointing towards the Z axis, I can see the X is on the right side, the Y is on the top. And this is a really, really helpful coordinate system. The Z axis, which is considered as the forward axis. So if you want any forward movement, you would move things in the Z axis. So the next thing you're going to learn about is the manipulation of the game objects. So you're going to start moving around game objects in the scene. You're going to be start rotating game objects in the scene. You're going to be start scaling game object in the scene and also seeing the changes in the transform. If you have any doubts so far, if you want me to go slow, go fast, Rehan, just be quiet. Just ask anything that you want to ask. Put it up in the chat and I'll check it right. All right, no queries. I think we can move on then. Well, so before we start manipulating any of the game objects, which out here our target will primarily be the cube out here because it's the most vague looking thing out in the scene. And the way we can do that is to first select the cube. And the way to do that is to go to the hierarchy and just select the cube. And once you select on it, you will see it highlighted on the scene right in front of you. Great, now we are ready to manipulate the game object. Now already I think you can see these arrows and this is the movement manipulation. To move it in the Z axis, you can just select the blue line because the blue represents the Z. And Rehan, how do you know that the blue represents the Z? Well, you can just look up in the gizmos on the top and it's going to say you exactly what represents what, the blue for the Z, the green for the Y, the red for the X. So to move it forward and backward, just select on the blue line and you can drag your mouse and your game object is going to move forward and backwards. To move it in the y-axis, that is up and down, select the green arrow and just drag it up and down. Similarly, to move it on the x-axis, you can select the red arrow and move it left and right, and it's as simple as that. The next thing we're going to learn is about rotating the game object. To rotate the game object, of course, we cannot use the movement tools. And the way we can do that is we can go ahead on the top right out here, top left, sorry, I stand corrected, on here, and you will find the rotate tool on the top left. You can click on that and then you can find this new game object manipulation sphere that pops up, and you can manipulate the rotation. But for the moment, let's go back to the move tool, which is just to the left of the rotation tool. Now there are three tools out here that we can use: the remove, the rotate, and the scale tool. And you can of course always go to the top left and choose these like a new beginner, like we all are in the end. But the idea is to be quick in our development process. So the way we can do that is by using the W, E, and R keys. If I press W, I'm selected on the move tool. If I press E, it changes to the rotate tool, and if I press R, it changes to the scale tool. So you can use W, E, and R to select the tools quickly. Let's go ahead and select the rotate tool. You can select that by pressing E after selecting a game object, or by choosing it from the toolbar on the left side. Now, to rotate it on the Z-axis, that is, imagine it being pivoted on the Z-axis. So you can have that and select on the blue line, and you can just rotate it around. Similarly, you can rotate it the X-axis by selecting on the red line, which is the representative of the X-axis. And how do I know that? Well, look into the gizmo out here, and you can rotate it around in the X-axis. For rotation in the Y-axis, I think you are pretty clear about that by now. Just select the green line and rotate it on the Y-axis, and it's as simple as that. And that is about rotation. To know about scaling, you're going to have to go ahead and press the R key. And to scale it in the equal dimensions in all of the three axes, you can select on the cube in between, and you can just drag your mouse, and it's going to scale equally. If you want to select and scale it on the Z-axis, use the blue, the red for the X, and Y for the green. And that is how you can scale it. If you have any questions so far, just put it forward in the chat. Let me have a look on both the YouTube chat and the Teams chat, and let me answer your questions if you have any. All right, no questions so far. So let's go back to Unity. Okay, so now I want you to also notice something on the transform. And like I said before, every game object has a transform. You can look at the position of the game object in the transform, the rotation of the game object in the transform, and the scale of the game object in the transform. And the transform is a very, very important thing because it tells us where exactly the game object is located in this vast Unity universe, how scaled up it is and how rotated it is. So if you can see on the Z-axis scale out here, if I increase the scale, it'll keep on expanding. If I rotate it on the Z-axis, you will see that everything is rotating. And I can also move it, and you will see that the change is getting updated real time on the transform on out here. So this is pretty much about the transform. To reset your cube to the origin of the Unity universe with a scale of 1 on each dimensions and a rotation of 0 in each dimensions, all you need to do is select on the three small dots on the transform and click on reset. And you will see that the position has been put on 0, 0, 0, rotation on 0, 0, 0 in each of the axes, and a scale of 1 on each of the axes. And that is how you put the thing right in between of the Unity universe. And it's really a really helpful tool, at least later. So let's go ahead now. We are done with the basic interface, and let's go ahead and create a small application in Unity that we can further go ahead and port it for AR on the XR field of Mrtk. So let's understand some ideas about the components of the cube in itself. So the first component of the cube, by selecting it, and you can see it on inspector, is the transform. And I've spoken enough about the transform, so I will not go ahead and say the same thing again. So the next thing we have is the mesh filter. So what is the mesh filter? Well, the mesh filter is telling the graphics part of the computer as to what kind of mesh should the graphics card render. And what is a mesh? Well, a mesh is exactly what needs to be. This kind of shape, the kind of dimensions of the game object that needs to be put up onto the game or the scene. And right now you can see that we have a cube mesh selected, which means that a cube is going to be rendered in the scene, and we can see that clearly by just looking at the cube in the scene. And we know that the graphics card is doing a fantastic job by making the cube in the scene. The next thing on the scene that you will see is a mesh renderer. What is a mesh renderer? Well, it takes details about the mesh that needs to be rendered and tells the graphics card how to render it and takes all the actions of the rendering. These two components, the mesh filter and the mesh renderer, will come itself when you create the 3D object known as cube. Finally, we have the box collider. And the box collider is what you call a system, a part of the physics system, physics engine inside of Unity that takes part of collisions. And why is collision important? It's important because right now where you have your laptop on top of your table, the reason that the laptop does not fall down onto the ground is because it is colliding with the surface of your table, and your table is colliding with the surface of your laptop, and it's canceling each other out and keeping it out there. And which is what exactly the box collider does, is it creates a collision system on the game object that you see here. And the reason it's called a box collider is because it is shaped like a box. On the time as that of the game object. So if you have a car, then you would probably use a collider that matches the mesh or the way of the dimensions of the car so that it suits it perfectly. Great then, so those are the basic components of the cube. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to be creating a Minecraft block. And the way to do that is let's go ahead and rename the cube. To rename the cube, just right click on the cube and select rename. And now let's type the name. I'll call it floor tile. And boom, we have renamed the tile or the cube to floor tile. Great. So now the next thing is this is a very vague looking white color boring box in the middle of a vast universe, and you definitely don't want that, right? You want something that looks cool, right? Bring some color into the life around. I'm going to be doing that right now. I'm going to give it the color of dirt. Why dirt? Because that's what's there below the grass right now, anywhere you go. And this is the exact thing we're going to do. But how do we bring some color into my life or the life of this boring looking cube in the Unity universe? And the way you do that is by creating a material. And a material is something that's going to wrap around the game object, and it's going to give it color. It's going to give it various normal maps and stuff that's going to make it look much better. So let's go to the project window that's down here in the bottom. And we had already created a materials folder. So let's open up that materials folder. Right click, create, and choose material, and the material is out there just below audio mixer and lens flare. You can see that there are a bunch of stuff that Unity provides, but at this moment we are going to be using just the material. So create a material, you'll be asked to rename it. I'll rename it as dirt. Right. Why is the material white, Rehan? Because Unity likes to keep things simplistic. It wants white, it wants everything to reflect off of it. Well, so the way we can change that is by selecting on the material and looking at the properties of the material. Where do we look in the properties? The inspector on the right side, on the window on the right side, and there are a bunch of stuff out here that we will not completely cover in this course. We are just going to cover some of the things that we require. And the first thing we require is the thing that we want to change the color of the cube. We want to make it not white, we want to make it the color of dirt. And the way we can do that is we can go ahead and change the albedo map. The albedo is, you can consider it as the primary map that maps onto the material and gives it a color. To change the color, choose the option on the right side that you see is white. And let's make this color wheel is going to get popped up. And just go ahead and select one of your colors in the primary circle and then just drag it and find a color that matches dirt. Yep, I think this matches dirt perfectly for the time being. And the way you can visualize the color is by looking at in your project window, or you can just expand this in your inspector, this window, and you can look at how the dirt looks like. If you left click on it, you can also move it around in case your texture is a bit more interesting. Now, of course, you can see that the light is reflecting off of this dirt. You can see that we have this spot of white light out here, a little bit of darkness on the side, but that's pretty weird because dirt does not reflect light. Well, how can we solve that? Well, we can just change the smoothness of it. And the smoothness determines the amount of light that's going to bounce off of it. So let's make the smoothness 0. And you can see that the dirt now does not reflect light in the way it was reflecting before. If I increase the smoothness all over to 1, you can see that it is reflecting everything. But we don't want that, so we're going to put that to 0. And great, you have made your dirt material. To put the dirt material onto the cube, all you need to do is left click on it and just drag it onto the cube. And you will see that your cube became brown. And good job, you have created a material and gave it a color, and now it looks like a block of dirt. If you have any questions regarding material creation, just pop it in the Microsoft Teams chat or in the YouTube session. Hey guys from YouTube, I hope you guys are enjoying the session too out there, and you can drop down your chat because I'm looking at both of them, and let's answer some questions if you have any. Let's give it 30 seconds to see if there is any questions. Well, no questions. Well, let's go ahead then. So we have a cube out here and we want something more. We want, let's say, this looks pretty vague because it's just dirt, but Minecraft doesn't do that. We want some grass on top of it. So let's go ahead and create some grass. The best way to do that is you can, of course, create another cube and stuff, but I'm just going to go ahead and select the floor tile on the hierarchy. And I'm going to press Ctrl+D. What Ctrl+D does is it duplicates the game object in the scene. And this is pretty useful because when you duplicate stuff, you can later on increase your efficiency, you can increase your speed and lower development times. Let me go ahead and rename this floor tile to grass. I believe you already know how to do that. Let's go ahead and create, and before that, let's move around a bit. and we can't see the grass. Where is the grass cube, Ryan? You lied to us. Well, I didn't, my friends. You can just go ahead and click on the grass out here in the hierarchy and just pop it out, and you will see that it's coming out. The reason it's right there inside the cube is because it's kind of getting instantiated or created in the same position because we are duplicating it, and it's looking almost the same, which is why we could not differentiate. So now we have two cubes. So let's go ahead and create a new grass material. I believe you already know how to do that. Just go ahead, right click, create grass. Give it the color of green. I'm going to give it a little bit of smoothness because let's imagine that there was a little bit of rain and the grass reflects a bit. And let's add this material onto the cube. Now, using the method I taught you for moving around in the scene, manipulate this game object and bring it up by selecting W after clicking on the game object and bring it up. Put it towards the left side using the x-axis of the red object, and then press R to switch on the scaling tool like we talked about in the beginning of the class, and then just reduce the size of it a bit and put it down, and voila, we have a huge block of grass right now. So we have created successfully our first Minecraft block. Now let's go ahead, and I don't like it in between of the scene, so let me move it towards the right side. So I drag it on the right side, and for some reason the grass is still stuck there. Why is that? Well, okay, fine. Maybe it's a glitch in Unity. So let me press the grass back. I think it was good in the origin itself. So let me bring it back to the origin. I can just do that by selecting 0 on the x-axis in the position of the transform. And oh my God, why isn't the grass moving with the floor tile? That is not a glitch. That is because we got it wrong. And the reason we got it wrong is because the game objects are independent of each other. To make it dependent of each other, of course, we need to follow the law of life, like child. A child is a dependent parent, and the only way the grass would be dependent on the third block for the movement or for the location would be only if the grass was a child of the floor tile. But we ain't God. How do we make it a child of the floor tile? Well, we can actually, especially in the Unity universe where we created this universe, we can do whatever we want. So the way we can do that is just select on the grass on the hierarchy, left click and hold on it, and just drag it inside the floor tile. And you'll see that there is an indentation. And this indentation means that the grass is a child of the floor tile. Congratulations. So parent-child relationship is basically this. When a child is a part of the parent, the child is dependent on the parent for some of its properties, and the child will reflect those dependent properties. So now if I just select on the floor tile and move it around, you will see that the grass block is moving around with the floor tile. Very basic overview of parent-child relationship. The idea in this session is not to learn about parent-child relationship. So if you want to do that, just go ahead and Google it, because that's the most interesting tool out there. Today, we're going to learn about Unity, and let's go ahead and continue. So now let's bring in some more blocks. So let's say I want another block, and I duplicated it using Ctrl+T and bring it here, Ctrl+T, bring it here, and Ctrl+T, bring it here. And great, I have 4 blocks in the scene. Let's say in the development cycle, I realized, hey, you know what? I want a capsule on top of all of these 4 blocks. So the way you would do that right now is right clicking on the game object. And because you want it to be a child of certain game object, so just select the game object you want it to be a child of and select the required game object. So I'm going to select 3D object and create a capsule. Let's bring it up here and resize. But you see the problem here. You want each of your game object to have, or each of your floor tile game object to have a capsule. And right now on your scene, you have just 4 floor tiles, and you can easily put a capsule on each of the floor tiles. But That's not the case when you're making a game that's vast. You will have hundreds of thousands of floor tiles. And of course, one change, if you decide to do in the floor tile, you're going to have to replicate it on each of the four floor tiles in the entire scene. And that's not a great idea. The way we can ease that process is by using something known as prefabs. So prefabs are like molds in an industry where you can create one mold and give the mold a change, and anything that you produce out of that mold is going to reflect that change. Prefabs in Unity as such is called, or the full form of it is prefabricated objects. So it's already fabricated, and any change that you make in the prefab itself will be changed in each of the instances of the prefabs. So when you create a prefab instance, it will reflect the change of the prefab. And if you're confused, oh my God, Ryan, what's an instance? Well, an instance is a copy of the prefab. So if it's a copy of the prefab, then it's going to reflect that mode of the prefab. So let's delete the capsule out of here, and let's delete the 3 game duplicates of the floor tile that I selected. You can select them by pressing Control and selecting on each of the floor tiles and let's. So let's create a prefab of the floor tile, and the way we can do that is the first thing to go to assets and let's create a new sub warehouse for prefabs. So right click, create folder, and let's call it prefabs. Inside of that, just click on the game object that you want to prefab it and just drag it inside that folder. And you will see that now it is blue in color, and the blue color is a sign that it has been prefabbed. Now I can bring in copies of the prefab. So I've given 1, 2, 3. Let me select it and drag it out. And great. And now you will notice that if I make a change to the prefab, so let me go to the prefabs folder and select on the floor tile prefab, you will see that it's written prefab asset. So when I click on open prefab in the inspector, it's going to open in this blue color scene. And let's go ahead and add a capsule like we did the last time. And let's go out of this prefab. And the way you can go out of this prefab is by selecting this left arrow on the hierarchy. This arrow out here. And you will see that all of your floor tiles now have the capsule. Voila, you solved your issue where you have to create or duplicate and change it everywhere, because now it's going to follow each whatever the prefab tells it. So as of the moment, we don't require a capsule, so I'm going to open the prefab. You can also open it by double clicking on it, and I'm just going to delete the capsule and go. Great, so that is prefabs. If you have any doubts, just pop it in and I will check the YouTube chat and the Teams chat. And then we're going to bring some action to the game, and that is bring a player in and make the player jump. And then we're going to go ahead and finally get into Mrtk, which is the idea of this session. Let's wait for 10 more seconds because of the delay and latency. Right, so no questions so far. So let's go ahead and continue with Unity. So now I'm going to go ahead and just create an empty game object just to organize my scene. So just right click, create empty, and rename it as level C. And I'm going to drag in all of these floor tiles by selecting it and just left clicking and dragging it inside this empty game object. So now if you can already think of it, these all are a child of the level scene. So the transform will be dependent on the level scene because it's the parent. Finally, we're going to create a very simple game object, a capsule. Oops, sorry about that. Yep. A capsule because we want our player to be a capsule. And let's bring it up out here on top of the first block. It to a small size, about this much, maybe a little bit bigger. And great, so we have our player. So let's rename this as player. I believe you already know how to rename it. And we have a player on the scene. Great, so now let's go ahead and play this game and see what happens. You can play this game by selecting the play button on top of it, on top of the scene window. And if I click play, you can see that I'll be shown in the Unity game window. And now we are seeing what the camera is seeing. But this is not a game, Rehan. You lied to us. There's nothing happening out here. Everything is so static. Well, then let's go ahead and make it dynamic. Let's make the player jump whenever we tell it to jump. So this is where we're going to be using scripting, or we're going to get an idea of Unity C# scripting. So let's go ahead and create a script. The way to create a script is, again, go to the assets folder in the project window, open the scripts folder, right click, create, and create a C# script. Now be very careful. As soon as you create a C# script, you'll be asked to rename it, and you must rename it correctly because this is the exact name that has to be there in the name of the class of the C# script. So I'm going to be naming it player, and then I'm going to go ahead and open player. So you can open it by double clicking on it. Great, so now you have your Unity C# opened up. In my case, I've opened up in Visual Code, and for some reason my Visual Code C# compiler is not working well right now. Let me just go ahead quickly and try fix that. All right, so it's working. Great. So now you will be greeted with this looking class out here, a player, a C# script. So this is one of the basic C# script. So let me go quickly through what this is. On the top, you can see the namespaces that this script requires. The Unity Engine namespace is specifically for working with Unity Engine, and this mono behavior. So we have a public class called player, and it is inheriting from mono behavior, and this mono behavior is inside Unity Engine. So what is mono behavior? Well, mono behavior is what controls the things inside Unity. So if you want to access the transform, if you want to access the rigid body, which we're going to add soon, and if you want to access a bunch of these stuffs, you have to do it through the mono behavior. Then we have the start function. Now the start function is called in the first frame. So whenever your game loads, whenever your scene loads where the script is being used, this function called start will be the first function to be called once on the first frame of the game. Finally, you have the update function, which is called once per frame once per every frame. So if your frame rate is 50 frames per second or 50 FPS, then this is going to be called 50 times per second. So let's go back to Unity and let's assign this script to the player. So let's select on player, game object, and just left click on the player script and drag it onto the inspector. Go down to the inspector a bit and just drag it onto the inspector. And you will see that it has been attached onto the player game object. Another thing that we want to do is add a component known as the rigid body. So before we go ahead and make the game object jump, we need something. We need a gravity, because if there's no gravity, how will the player jump? It's always going to fly off to space. So we're going to make the rigid game object player jump. So to do that, we need to add a rigid body. And the way to do that is click on add component. After selecting on the player in the inspector, click on add component and search for rigid body. And you will find two rigid body. I'm going to select the first one, which is a 3D rigid body. You will see that it has a mass component, a drag, angular drag, and much more. We're not going to talk about that much. We're going to be interested under use gravity because this is what we are interested in. And if we see this, it is ticked, which means it is now you're going to use gravity. So if I pull this up, the game object up a bit, and if I press play, you will see that the game object will fall down in the scene. Let me go back to the scene view and try dragging it back up, and it's again falling down. And the reason it's happening is because gravity is in action and it's pulling everything towards the downward direction. And there goes the capsule. So you can stop playing it, and great. So we have gravity now working on the rigid body. So now we have gravity, now we have the game object. So let me just get it back to its initial location. So now let's make it jump. So let's go to C# again. And before we make it jump, we want to make it jump using the spacebar key as of now. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to type if input, which is the interface for the input system in Unity, dot key down. So it's going to see which key has the user pressed, the key in the keyboard, open the bracket, and then I'm going to put key code dot space. So it's going to look for the space key, and then so what it's doing is it's going to check the input system about which key has been pressed down. And if the space key has been pressed down, it's going to return true. And this is going to be true. So now, of course, we are doing object-oriented programming. And in any programming, actually, it's a good idea to always make functions for the things we want to do. So let's go ahead and create a jump function. To do that, just press right jump and give it the parentheses. And you will see that now it has been given a red squiggly line. This means that, hey, Rehan, you wrote about jump. Where is jump? I can't find it anywhere. Well, to get it, you can either go ahead and create your own jump function. I'm just going to use the intelligence, as they call it in VS Code, and just going to press Control dot and generate method player.jump. I'm going to do that, and I have a new method called jump. Just below update. I'm going to change the access specifier to public, and I will tell you why I changed it to public a little later, not now. And I'm going to remove this throw not implemented exception because we do not require it. Inside of this, for the first part, let's go ahead and print a debug statement because we want to see if this part of the code is actually working. And the way to do that is to write debug.log. So this is used to log a message to the Unity console. And I'm going to put a string called space has been pressed, my friend. And let's not forget the semicolon, and that is done. Save this script and come back to Unity. Again, make sure that your script has been attached to at least one game object. In our game object, it's the player game object. Because until a script is attached to a game object, it will not work. Now, to play the scene, again, go ahead and press on the play button. And now the scene is being played. So let's go to the console window, which is just on the right side of the project window. And now let's click on the game scene, game view, and press space. And you can see that we saw a debug message says space has been pressed, my friend. Great. So now we know that our input system is working. So every time we're pressing space, we are getting our input step. And that's great. That is what we needed. So now the next part is to make it jump. And the way we're going to use it is we're going to use the physics system. And the physics system is controlled by the rigid body component that we added in the player game object. If you have any questions so far, just drop it down, and then we're going to implement the jump functionality and then finally transfer to Mrtk. Let's give it 30 seconds for any questions. Both in the YouTube chat and the Teams chat. I hope the YouTube people are having fun out there. All right, great. I think then we can go ahead and proceed with Unity again. So now we have the physics system that we want in the Unity game. Okay, there is one error, one issue. My console shows an error, input does not exist. In that case, Avanish, I would say that you look into the code. Make sure you used input.getKeyDown key code.space exactly the same, and make sure that you are using Unity engine for that. This is handling the input system, so if you're facing that issue, either you wrote the key code.space as wrong, or there might be some syntactical error that you can correct right out here. Maybe I can drop this part of the code in the chat so that you can use it. Great, so now we have the rigid body system. So we have the rigid body component attached to the game object, and the rigid body is a physics system that handles all the physics related things inside the Unity game engine. And the way we're going to do that is we want the game object to jump when you press space, and we can let it have Google. Okay, great that it worked, Avinash. And we want we want gravity to bring it back down, right? So the way we're going to do this is we're going to add it a velocity from the bottom so that it goes up, and then let gravity bring it back down. And the way we can do that is we can access the rigid body component of the game object through script. And indeed, we can access any of the components of the game object through script. And we're going to make that change in the jump function. So let's go ahead and type get component, and this returns the type of component that we want. It's going to be using generics, so use the generic symbol. That is the weird looking braces. I forgot what's that called, the triangular brackets. And then I'm going to write rigid body, so the type of the game object that I want to get, type of the component. And finally, it's a function, so I'm going to press the 2 parent. I have the rigid body component in my hand. The next thing I want to do, like I said, was I wanted to give it a kick, a velocity from below. So to do that, I'm going to access the function called dot add force, because the velocity, of course, you need a force to add velocity, right? Nothing. Galileo's, was it Galileo's? I think it was Galileo's law regarding nothing moves around until a force is applied. So let's go ahead and add force to it. And if it was not Galileo, forgive me, because I am not that great in physics. Don't be like, that's not Galileo, it's someone else around. I am sorry for giving wrong information regarding physics. Anyway, so go ahead. So we're going to add a little bit of force on the bottom of the player. And then you can see that the intelligence of VS Code is showing us that it requires a direction, the vector, like I promised you. We're going to be using the vector tree. In which direction do you want the force to be applied? Vector tree states for vector in 3 dimensions, the x, y, and z. Because we want it to apply force on the upward direction, I'm going to write vector 3 dot up. And I'm going to multiply it, because that is going to return me only a unit. So 1 unit of upwards vector, and that's not much of a jump. So I'm going to multiply it with, let's say, 5. And that's going to give me 5 units of force in the upward direction. So it's going to give a much more bigger force than is required. Finally, I'm going to give it the force mode, so the type of force to apply. And if I search on force mode, we'll see that intelligence is showing me multiple choices of force, the acceleration, force, and impulse and velocity change. We're going to be using the velocity change because, as it describes itself, it adds an instant velocity to the body and it ignores its mass. So right now the mass is 1 kg as specified in the inspector, but we don't want to do that and we just want to give it a velocity. So choose that, add a semicolon, and we are done for this part. Save this and let's come back to Unity. Let the scripts compile. Press play. And now let's press space and boom. Our game object is finally jumping and it finally looks at least like a game. There's one small problem in this. The thing is, we put this inside the update function. The jump function is being called from the update function. and we gave it a unit vector upwards and multiplied it with 5. So this jump function is going to be called once per frame, right? So if your system is slow and it runs at 30 FPS, 30 FPS, in that case, it's just going to jump 30 times, or the jump function is called 30 times, and it's not going to jump too high. On the other hand, there's some other guy that's using a high-end system with a 130 FPS frames rates per second, and that guy is going to jump crazily, and that is not something we want. We want there to be consistency in the game. So the way we solve that is by multiplying this vector out here with something known as time.delta time. And what is time.delta time? Well, time.delta time is the time taken by the frame in the last second. So how much time it took to execute a frame in the last. So when the frame executed the last time. So this is going to be a very minute amount because one frame takes quite a less amount of time to execute itself. So of course we're going to have to multiply it with a higher number. So I'm going to multiply it with, let's say, 800, because of course we need to look into the decimal point because it's very small. And this is going to be frame rate excuse me, this is going to be frame rate independent. So now it's going to jump the exact same height in almost all computers. Let's save this. Let's go to Unity. Let's play this and let's press space, and it's jumping a good amount of. Voila! And it's going to fall down because we did not give it a most stable structure like a cube, because it is a rounded bottom. Great. So our application is up and running in the Unity editor. But that's boring, Rehan. You promised us let's make it for XR. You just showed me the editor. I don't want that, my friend. I want something in XR. So let's go ahead and do that. And before we proceed, if you have any questions, drop it down in the chats. I'll look at there. And people in YouTube, also drop down your chats in the YouTube live chat, and I'll be there to solve your issue. Let's give it 30 seconds, and we're going to start with Mrtk, a beautiful product from Microsoft. And no, Microsoft isn't paying me to say that. Okay, great. No questions. So before we begin with Mrtk, there are certain specifications that we must do. And I'm requesting you to follow this with me as I do it. And I know some of this is going to be very confusing for you, but it's mentioned in the Mrtk documentation. It needs to be done, and you can. I would explain it, but it's going to consume a lot of time. We don't have much time, so I would rather ask you to follow me as I do. So the first thing we're going to do is click on File, click on Build Settings, and then once you get open up on the scene, I'm going to click on Add Open Scenes because I want to build the scene that is currently open. Once I do that, you will see that the scene/sample scene, or whatever you named your scene, will be shown out here. That's perfect. The next thing I want to do is I want to build it for Android. So the way I'm going to do that is going to select the Android in the platforms, and I'm going to choose Switch Platform. And let Unity switch the platform to Android for me. I hope you have downloaded your Android build support while downloading Unity, because if you have not, then this option will not show. Wait for a while to see the good old green screen. And once that's done, we have now transferred to Android. Yay! Now, the next thing I want you to do, and again, please follow me and bear with me while we make this application. Click on Player Settings that you'll see on the bottom left of the Build Setting window, and click on it. And you will open up on this weird looking project settings screen. In the other settings, which is currently open, you will see that there is something known as graphics APIs. And now these are APIs for graphics. We're going to disable the Vulkan graphics. So click on the Vulkan. and then just go ahead and select the minus option, which says remove selection from the list. So select on Vulkan and then select minus and let Vulkan be removed. And great, Vulkan is finally removed. You're going to ask me, Ridwan, what are we doing? Well, this is specified in Mrtk documentation. The reason we are removing this is because Mrtk does not support the Vulkan API. The next thing I want you to do is go to window that is up there near the file, edit, assets, game objects, so the window option on the top left side in your toolbar. Open it and select Package Manager. Open Package Manager and wait for things to load. After you have this loaded, I want you to go to Packages. So this is this option out here and select it. And choose Unity Registry. After you've done that, you'll see a lot of things out here. It might take a while for you to get the data from the servers, or it might already be there, depends on if you have used Unity before or not. Mine, I have used multiple times, which is why it's already there. I want you to go down and select AR Foundation 4.1.7, and then you will find this install button on the bottom right. Just click on it and it'll start installing AR Foundation. So what is AR Foundation? Well, AR Foundation is a subsystem which is platform independent, and it's made specifically for Unity that handles all of the AR related functionalities for. So let it install. After it has installed, the next thing that we want to install is the AR Core XR plugin. So select on the AR Core XR plugin and again install the 4.1.7 version. AR Core XR plugin is for Android devices, and this acts as a system on top of the AR Foundation that handles things related to XR or AR or augmented reality in your Android devices. Great. So now you have AR Foundation and AR XR Core plugin done. So now you are ready to import Mrtk. If you have any doubts, please bring it in the chats and I'll have a look at it. And then let's proceed with importing Mrtk. We have the base setup done, so now we can proceed as fast as we can. Any questions, drop in the chats. I'll give 30 seconds to look at both the YouTube people out there, the cool people at YouTube, and the coolest people at Teams who joined in here today. Any queries? You want me to go slow? You want me to go fast? You want me to get out of my seat and go out of the room? Anything that you want, drop it in the chats and we will do that. Okay, great. So you guys are doing great. That's perfect. Now let's go back to Unity. And now I believe I told you to download the Mrtk feature tool. I gave the link in Microsoft Teams as well as YouTube to download, and I also showed you where to download. So after you have downloaded that, you will be given a zip file that you can unzip. So once you unzip it, you will get all of these files. I want you to select the mixed reality feature tool that's gonna be there after you unzip it. Double click on it and let the application open. So this helps you configure or import the packages for Mrtk into your project. Next, click on Start. Now you need the project path, and this is why I told you to remember the project path. I'll just go ahead and look at my project name. It's called My First XR Application. I can see it on the top left. So let's go and search for the project. So I know it's in Unity projects and it's called My First XR Application. Let's find that this one, open it, and yep, so I have it out right now. Next, click on Discover Features. And there are a lot of stuffs, but we only require a handful of them. And I would suggest you will install only the ones I'm telling you to install right now, or else it's going to take a long time. Expand the Mixed Reality Toolkit. select the Mixed Reality Toolkit extensions, the Mixed Reality Toolkit foundations, and the Mixed Reality Toolkit standard assets. Use the version 2.7.2. Do not use any of the latest version or the older versions, because there are some issues with the older ones and the new ones tend to have some issues. This I have verified it myself and it's working perfectly. So let's go with this. So 2.7.2, Mixed Reality Toolkit extensions, foundations, and standard assets. Next, select on Get Features, select on Import, select on Approve, and it is done. So it's going to write Unity project updated. It might take a few seconds for you to get some things from the servers, and it's going to be done. So next, finally, click on Exit, come to Unity, and it will resolve its packages, and let's wait for them. This is the most boring part of Unity. You'll find yourself looking at this green color screen half the time, and you'll be bored. So I would always suggest get yourself a cup of coffee, get yourself a Rubik's Cube, basketball, or hoop, anything to just spend time, because most of it is staring into this screen until it finishes. And it restarts. Sometimes it's going to restart a couple of times. Gets pretty boring. And that is how you create great stuff. Consistency, my friend. If you have any queries, pop them down in the chats. I'll have a look at it. Anything you want to discuss, talk about, and I'm there right there. Yep, it's done. So now again, guys, I want you to follow me as I do it. This is a very crucial step and you should not mess up this part. If you have the question, Rehan, how do you know what to do? Well, it's part of the documentation, so you can just check that out. For this, because of time constraints, I want you to follow me. I'll not be explaining all of these steps because these are basic just documentation setup steps that are required. So the first thing you want to do is click on Unity Open XR plugin on this window. Once you do that, you will wait again for this thing to finish. Then it will restart your editor. Just click yes and let it restart your editor. So while it does its beautiful thing in the background, let's talk about XR. What is XR? Well, XR is a mixed reality spectrum, and we are using right now the Mrtk. So what is Mrtk, Rehan? Well, it is a Microsoft-driven project that provides a set of components and features to accelerate cross-platform MR application development in Unity. So you can create XR apps or MR apps in Unity using Mrtk. That is great. What is mixed reality, my friend? Well, mixed reality is, as stated, a next level of computing followed by mainframe PCs. So you can, of course, read that from the slide. So let me tell you what I know about mixed reality. Well, instead of having components being put up on your 2D screens, mixed reality is the idea to put up components in your 3D space in front of you by just wearing a pair of glasses. Or it could be the dashboard of your car's window, or it could be a mobile phone. So the idea is to render content not in a 2D screen, but in 3D space. And Rehan, how is that useful? Well, right now we find ourselves stuck to these 2D screens. We cannot move them around, but with XR glasses, XR dashboards and whatnot, you can just wear them. You don't have to carry your physically heavy stuff in your pocket and your phone in your hands. Let's say you're laying down, you don't need a phone in your hand anymore. You can just wear the glasses and look at the content in front of you in the 3D space. You can work with it, you can touch it, you can manipulate it and do a lot of cool stuff. You can extend the size of it. And the real power of it comes down is to the fact that when you combine that with cloud computing, so instead of doing all the calculations, so nowadays new glasses are coming up which does its calculations in the cloud and no longer in the phone itself. So that's making the glasses almost as the size of my glasses, and it's thin. It's easy to carry, lightweight. I don't have to use my hands, as in I don't need to hold the device on my hands. I can see things in 3D perspective in front of me, go around it, interact and have fun with it. Compare that with bring in the ideas of distributed systems, making what they call, I think, very, very coolly stated in the Silicon Valley about a distributed system, a decentralized system, and you have a system that's free, a system that's quick, and a system that is secure. And that is a great way. And another aspect of it is the fact that it's environment friendly. And how is it environment friendly? Where you just have one pair of glasses, you no longer need to make the keyboard keys or the mouse or the cables to go with the computer, the laptop screen, display and all, just a pair of glasses. And that's it. And everything, the keyboard, everything is in the virtual world. So it's saving the environment and it's part of the virtual world. So XR, mixed reality. So imagine reality as a spectrum. And when you imagine reality as a spectrum, on the leftmost side is the physical world, and on the rightmost side is the digital world. So you have technologies like augmented reality that is more of the physical world and less of digital content, and contents like virtual reality that's more of the digital world. So it's more of virtuality and less of reality. So mixed reality is the spectrum of the line in between physical world and digital world, where these are mixed nicely, and with addition of things like haptics, which is sensations in your hands. So if you wear haptic gloves, you can actually feel. So if you are touching a virtual leather seat, then you can feel the sensation of leathers on your fingers. So it's pretty cool. This entire thing is known as the virtuality continuum. You can go ahead and read up on this later on. Okay, so let's go to Unity, and we have a couple of steps. First of all, let's just remove the update check. And we have the project configurator. Click on Show XR Plugin Management Settings. Once you click on that, you will see that there is this option called XR Plugin Management. Just select on that. And just go ahead and tick on AR Core, because we want to use the AR Core for Android as our plugin manager for the XR. After you've done that, you can go ahead and close this and skip this step. And again, click on Apply. And it will restart your system again. So apply it and let it restart your system. A great tool right now is also the glasses that's coming out, like GeoGlass and Nreal SDK, Nreal glasses that are already there. You can get these glasses that are much more cheaper than the Microsoft HoloLens or Facebook Oculus, and you can go ahead and have fun. GeoGlasses will be launching soon by the end of this year or next year, and it's going to be pretty good. If you want to learn more about XR and all, you feel free to ping me in LinkedIn or any other places, and we can have a nice chat with them. All right, so we have our project now almost set up for Mrtk. So again, I want you to follow certain things as I do it. So follow these. These are part of documentations, and I don't want to consume time telling what it is doing. So the first thing we want to do is go ahead and select mixed reality, the new option that has popped up in the top toolbar on the left side. Select on mixed reality, select on toolkit, select on add to scene and configure. So this is going to handle configuring Mrtk for your scene right now. So once you click that, you will see that mixed reality toolkit has been added, and a lot of other stuffs have been added on the hierarchy. At this moment, let's not focus on that. Again, click on mixed reality on the top, select toolkits, select utilities, and then select Unity AR, and finally update scripting defines. You need to do that so that Mrtk is normally used with HoloLens devices, which are XR devices given by Microsoft. But at this moment, we are using the mobile phone Android devices, so we need to update the scripting defines as shown here. So go ahead and click on this, and that is going to do the necessary thing for you. Great. So the next thing is, again, please follow with me as I do it. Select mixed reality toolkit in the hierarchy, and you will get this inspector window popped up. Maybe expand this with inspector window a bit. In this option, I want you to give it a second while it's done. Yeah. In this option, I want you to select the default HoloLens 2 configuration profile. Click on it. Great. So these mixed reality toolkit is handling the subsystems like the camera, the input, boundary, spatial awareness, and a lot of stuff. We will not get into the 12th of that as of now. Select on default HoloLens 2 configuration profile and click on the option called clone on the right hand side. The reason we are cloning this is because we want to modify some of these parts to help us work and make it work for Android. Give it a profile name. I'll just let it be as it is and press on clone. After we have cloned the configuration profile, now I can go ahead and clone and use the subsystem. So the first thing I'm going to use is the camera subsystem. So select on camera and again press on clone on the right side. So we are going to be manipulating the camera subsystem. Click on clone and again click on clone. Great. And after that, I want you to expand the camera settings provider. After that, click on Add Camera Setting Provider. And you will see that the new data provider 4 has been added on the bottom. Open that, and in the type, expand the None option. Choose Microsoft Mixed Reality.toolkit.experimental.unity.AR. And choose the Unity AR camera settings. Great, so we have now set it up for Android development. Now, something that you need to see is that if you go game view, there's nothing there, and that's because the camera, as you can see it on the scene, has been put in the origin. So let's click on the level scene. You will find it out here, the transform, and just let's put it a little bit back. And now the next thing I want to do is I want to make it a bit smaller. And the reason I want to do that is because in Mrtk, this one Unity cube, this Unity square that you see out here in the window is representative of 1 meter in the real world. So of course you don't want this to be 1 meter long. So I'm just going to reduce the scale. So if I reduce the scale of the parent known as level scene, all of its children's scale will also reduce. So I'm going to reduce the scale of it. I'm going to drag it a little ahead of the camera, about this much, maybe a little below. Bring it a little bit back. This will be, I think, enough. Let me look into the game view. I think it's a bit high. Bring it a bit back. Yep, I think this is fine. Great. Now, when we are using this in the mobile phone, we cannot access the space bar. So for that, we need to create a button, an Mrtk button that we can use for making the cube jump. So to create an Mrtk button, go to the project window, expand the packages folder, which is this folder. Search for Mixed Reality Toolkit Foundation. Open the SDK folder. Open the Features folder. Open the UX folder. Then open the Prefabs folder. Then open the Interactables folder. And finally, open the Prefabs folder. So it's Mixed Reality Toolkit Foundation, SDK, Features, UX, Interactables, and Prefabs. And you will see a hell lot of buttons out here. I'm going to be using the HoloLens 2 pressable button, or the pressable button HoloLens 2. I think I'll be using this one maybe. I think this one looks a bit better. Or maybe we can go with this one. Yeah. So select any of these prefabs, and I think by now you know how to bring it onto the scene. Just drag it onto the scene. Select on Import TMP Essentials. This is Text Mesh Pro. So this is how your text will look, and it's mandatory that you import it. And you don't need to import the examples and extras. That's fine. After that, I want the button to be positioned nicely. It's going to be bring it on the origin. I'm going to put it a bit back, scale it up a bit. And yep, that's I think pretty much it. Let me look in the game view. Yeah, I think it looks fine. Now, this is the point where I told you that it becomes really irritating when a lot of gizmos show up. So the way I can disable this is by just clicking on the gizmos, and boom, it's gone. Great. Now, before we put the required changes in the button for it to configure it for jumping, I need to make one small change in the script. So let's go to open the script up, and let's remove this if get key down key code.space, and that is because we no longer require it anymore, because we'll no longer be using the space button. So just remove this. So far, please drop it in the chat, and we'll finally build it for Android. Yep, sure, I can repeat the steps from the interactable. Just select on the button, make sure you lock the inspector on the top right side, go down and search for the interactable game script, which is out here on the button. You will find an event known as the onClick event. Click on the player and drag it on to the onClick event. From the functions, it's going to show no function. Open it, choose the player script, which is shown as player, and then finally choose the jump function. And that's it. Testing it one last time before we finally go ahead and check it. iPhone, great, it's working. So the first thing now we're going to build this for Android. So what you're going to be requiring is a cable connected to the computer. Attach it to your phone. Make sure that your phone has USB debugging allowed. So you need to have your developer mode in your for enable. If you don't know how to do that, you can just Google it. It's pretty simple. Once you have done that, click on File, click on Build Settings, and now on your run device. So once you have your developer mode enabled and USB debugging allowed, on your run device, instead of default device, just go ahead and choose your Motorola. So I have a Motorola One Fusion Plus, so just go ahead and select that. And finally, once you've done that, go ahead and select Build and Run. Give it a name. I'm going to type test.apk and save it and let Unity build it for you. If everything has been done right, then there will be no errors. And if it is not, then, well, we need to check what the errors are. Any questions that you might have, put it down in the chat. People in YouTube, I hope you guys are having fun too. Both the teams and YouTube people. I hope you guys are learning. I hope you guys are listening or trying to do things as we are doing it together, because that's the fun out there. So let it get built. Any questions, drop it down in the chat and I'll check it out. Takes a while. Good things take a while in life. So this is one of the most boring screens. And the worst part is when sometimes you're going to reach the building gradle part of this, and then it's just going to fail in the build grading part. And you just wasted 30 minutes of your time in while building this application. So that's the worst part. Let's hope it does not happen this time. But yeah, that's life. Not everything is fair, I guess. Yep, I think it's done. I think I'll have to copy my APK because I disconnected my phone by mistake. All right, just bear with me. For you, it should build and run itself directly. For me, I'll just have to copy the APK because I, by mistakenly, out of excitement, disconnected the. So let's go ahead and let me just change to file sharing. copy it into that's it. So let me just install it quickly and I will share my screen. Let me stop sharing my screen in the desktop. Let me start sharing my screen in the phone. Share screen. Start now. I think I can share my screen now. All right, let's search for my first XR application, and it is starting. And voila, I have my first XR application out here. There is the buddy cube out there. Let's go ahead and see if the buddy jumps if we click on the button. I'm going to get up from my seat a bit because I created it bigger than I should have. Let me change the angle to its landscape. And let's press on the button. I think I just blasted it into space or something. Let me just do that again. Be gentle with the buttons, gentlemen. Be gentle with the buttons. Well, I think we gave a velocity. Oh, here it is. I think we give a lot of velocity to the initial jump. Oh, there it is coming up. Yeah. And here we have it again. Perhaps we added a lot of velocity to it, but as you can see, we have the XR application. We can move around it. We can see it go in front of us. We can go in front of it, look at it, and well, this is your first XR application. So let's look at it one last time as it jumps pretty high. And there it is. You can see it coming down. I think it fell down. Well, anyways, so we need to have boundary conditions set it around. You should do things nicely. Come on. Let's come back. Let me stop presenting my screen. And that's it. So that is your first XR application with Mrtk and Unity. Congratulations, you just created a step into the future. I hope you guys enjoyed this session. If you have any doubts, relieve it in the conversation. Type it in your chat. If you have any doubts, bring it in here. If you like the session, give us a thumbs up. If you are paying attention, give a thumbs up. If you found it boring, give a thumbs down. And that is it. If you would like to continue this conversation, if you want to learn more about XR, Mrtk, feel free to reach out with me in LinkedIn and Instagram and any social media handles. I'll be there. Feel free to reach out at GDSC-VIT. It's one of the best clubs out there. And yep, thank you for joining in today. Any queries? I'll be here for a while. You can drop it in here. Yuvraj, perhaps you can help with that.